15 seconds putting that on there, let's be honest, right?
Oh, that piece, yeah.
The presentation, I
made sure there was no space between BSides and Delaware, though, because I noticed that was too random.
All right, gentlemen, how's our audio? Testing 1, 2, 3. What's that?
Testing 1, 2, 1, 3.
Okay.
Because it's going to the other rooms, so speak loud.
Oh, very nice. Oh, you're managing to cast to the other rooms as well?
What's on the screen?
Great idea. We walk in the first time and I'm like, is that a monitor screen? That would be awesome. If you've never spoken at a conference, looking at your slides is like a cardinal sin. So, having a monitor screen where you can actually see your slides and know what's going on is awesome. All right, so, are we on time? What time is it?
You're late. You're late.
It's my conference, I'm not late. It's when I show up, it's time. Okay? Good morning. This is our 9th BSides Delaware conference. It's our 2nd here at DTCC. It's great. As you can see, we have lines of people here. We're feeding everybody, some right now. Not that I'm picking on you. There's still plenty of bagels and Danish and coffee and everything. The cafe is open if you want a little more, something keto and proteinaceous. They have eggs and all that kind of good stuff. Scads of volunteers, people from other conferences have showed up just because they're like, yeah, what the heck, we'll give it a shot. We have amazing technology, and we're a conference about technology, but above all, BSides Delaware is a conference about being together and learning from each other. You'll notice on your badge, it doesn't say attendee, it says seeker. Because what we want is we want people that are seekers of knowledge. We want people that are here to learn and people that are here to collaborate and coordinate and network and be together. We made a conference, actually Janice and myself built this conference on the premise that we didn't want another drink-a-thon. We wanted a conference that would be family friendly. We wanted a conference that people would feel unafraid to come to and enjoy the heck out of. And I think we've really succeeded and blown it out of the park. I brought my newest toy to Spawn Camp upstairs, which is 5 pounds of Legos. Did you know you can buy bulk Legos on eBay? It's awesome. And like one kid just went, oh, Legos! Well, we're good. I succeeded, that was success. And along the way, we've made a lot of good friends and we've done some amazing stuff. And one of the good friends I made along the way is a gentleman named Bryan Inagaki. Now he's probably not gonna tell you very much about himself. And most of that is because he can't. A lot of his history is literally not able to be talked about unless you have this magic thing called clearance, or need to know, or why do I have a gun pointed at my face? Anyway, so we don't talk about those moments. So, but he's an amazing guy and an amazing speaker, and he's got a really interesting view on how security, business, and all of the different components work together. And so we asked him to be a keynote speaker, and I'm really excited to invite him and introduce him now. So do me a favor, give a big hand to Bryan.
All right, thank you, Josh. I'm gonna make sure I talk loud enough. I'm gonna split that real quick so I can get my timing right, because I don't want to run over.
Sorry.
Not my conference, So first things, so hello to everybody here at BSides. This is actually my 3rd year here. This is a really special place for me. This was my first security conference 3 years ago, believe it or not. I've been working in some form of security for a really long time, but this was my first time actually being in a true con, right? But also this is my home conference. I live in Delaware, I lived in Delaware, I live in PA. This is home for me, so I love it. I've got friends, I've got family, I've got colleagues in the audience, which is awesome. So I'm just really excited to be here. What is this all about? So we talk about this concept of business and the beast, and I'll give credit to a very good friend of mine, Keith Hoodlick. This was a discussion we had a couple months ago, and this was designed to be a co-presenter kind of talk, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it down for this today. But I want to talk about the 2 sides of business, which is, we call it this concept of business and the beast, and it's the business is the current state of where we are, and the beast is the future state. And then we get into this question of, well, what the heck is the beast? What is it that I'm talking about? And the beast to us is the challenges in the way that we're doing business, challenges in the way that we're doing security, or the way that we're doing our jobs. And as we discussed through this, what we talked about is this concept of taming the beast, right? If you can't tame that beast, you're gonna get consumed by it. For large companies, that means one thing. For small companies, it means another thing. for company or for individuals, right, that are working in this industry, it means something a little bit different. So Josh said, I'm not going to talk about who I am. I actually am a little bit. So I want to tell you about me. So I'm the director of cybersecurity risk management at a company called Thermo Fisher Scientific. We are a life sciences company. It's a great company to work for, but this is not what it's about. A little bit about just what I do. I do all the things in security that people don't think about. My team is responsible for developing and writing policy. We chart our organizational maturity. We do compliance, assessments, risk analysis. All those things that when you come into security, you go, I'm not doing that stuff. Well, the problem is those things are the fundamental underpinning of all the work that our architects and our engineers are doing. We work hand in hand with them. But so a little bit about me, like how did I get here? This journey is important because it is very odd, to say the least. I started off as a self-defense instructor right after college. I know my father was very proud that after 5 years and way too much money spent, I decided to go punch people for a living. I did that in 2 different states. It was great, I loved it. What wound up happening is I took a little bit of a divergence. I went into federal service. I was a federal special agent for the Diplomatic Security Service. Yes, I was a Fed. I get accused of it all the time. I was accused of it last year walking into BSides Delaware. I walked up, someone walked by and goes, "You a Fed?" I went, "Yeah, was." Anyway, so I know I kind of stick out like a sore thumb when I go to these things. It's just me, I can't help it. I actually, have kind of shortcut hair at times and whatnot. But that was an interesting experience because what happened was I learned a lot about physical security. That's really all I did for 5 years. I ran physical security programs. I was dealing with locks and doors and delta barriers and things that cost millions or billions of dollars to build. So I had this huge kind of just foundation, hundreds of thousands of dollars in time and training spent on me learning about physical security. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I always kept my technical side, but I was definitely not, wouldn't consider myself an IT person. From there is where the divergence started to happen. And I started going in different places, different ways, and I wound up in financial services. That was very, very different. That's where I actually had my first true quote-unquote IT job, where I was actually working in IT project management. I tried to get into security. I was actually looking at physical security, and before I knew it, a couple turns later, I was running our global vulnerability management program. From there, that led to me being at Thermo Fisher. So why is this important? First off, I think I probably should justify why I'm here. So while Josh likes me, I just want you guys know a little bit about the person in front of you. But more important, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, is my journey was anything but linear. It was that's the map, right? It just curved and went around, and I went left and right and sideways. And that is the most important thing about this industry and people in this industry. For most of my friends, most of you, right? Your journey was not linear. You didn't start thinking you were going to be a security person and ended up as a CISO. You started playing with computers or working at Best Buy or doing fine art history in college, and you found something that you liked or you were passionate about. Then you parlayed that into something else. You went to a conference, you met someone, you learned about forensics or machine learning or whatever. That's a good thing. That's something that we need to embrace in this industry. We do, but we need to embrace it more. We need to bring more people into the fold. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit when we talk about people. So I said this is about business and the beast. So business is the current state, beast is the future state, that changed. So when we talk about people, why are we talking about people? Well, that's what we do, right? We need people. You can't do this job without us. So you are very important. Companies say that people are our most important resource, and unfortunately in most companies that's a lie. You're a number, you're a button, a seat. What we need to do is change that. We need to change the way that's done. What I'm also seeing now is there's more talks, more conferences nowadays that they're actually having this. DerbyCon had a whole kind of mental health section to it. Joe Klein's going to be talking about recruiting or job seeking later today. We're talking about this more as an industry, so it's really, really important. Let me talk about the things that I don't like about where we are. So open office plans. Anybody work in an open office plan? You ever worked? Yeah, see a couple hands. All right, I can't justify this in any way whatsoever. In the interest of collaboration and maximizing space, we've turned what should be a pretty nice place into like a barely livable working condition. Now to be fair, you could be working in a coal mine or something else where it is a lot worse, but when it's just ridiculous. I mean, we took what should be getting people together, now everyone just sits around with giant Bose headphones so they don't have to listen to their neighbor. That's not collaborative. And also, humans need space. The worst of the worst, they actually get a ticket in the morning or you don't have a place to sit. You get your stuff out of a locker, you go sit down. Like, what? I just don't get that. So For me, as far as I'm concerned, this is a travesty that needs to go away. We don't have it, thankfully, where I work. If they did, I would fight against it. And whoever architected this kind of craziness, there's a special room down below for that person later on in life. Looking at other areas of how we do things, so working hours, set working hours. We know the schedule, right? You're in at 8, you have a smoke break or a coffee break at 10, you go to lunch at 12, you have another break at 3, and you leave the office at 5. We've been following this model for generations. Why? 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I have no idea who came up with that. It's just what we do. So in many places, this is absolutely required, right? How many of you guys work in a SOC, or you have kind of shift work, right? You kind of can't get away from that because you have to have coverage. But most of the rest of us, we don't work in that. We don't have that environment. So if you come in at 7, can you leave at 4? If you come in at 9, can you leave at 6? What if you work late on Thursday night? You spend 4 hours, that server's down. Can you come in late on Friday morning? The answer in most cases is no, which is utterly ridiculous. PTO accrual, I have a huge issue with PTO accrual, mainly because of why it's there. First off, you go, you get recruited for a company. We have 4 weeks of paid time off. Yes, come work for us. Oh, and on top of that, I'm going to give you sick time. No, that is actually built on a fundamental distrust of the worker. That's why sick time and PTO are separate. You have a lot less sick time because what can you do with sick time? You can call out. We only get a couple hours of that, right? 2, 3, maybe 5 days. PTO, you get 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's built on the fact that if you give people freedom, they're going to take advantage of the company. This goes back to factory work in the 10s and the 20s, and so we're still doing this to people. We don't trust them. So if we don't limit you, you're going to take advantage of me as a manager or of my company. So therefore, I'm just going to put the restrictions on you up front. When we talk about talent, so we buy talent in this industry right now. So for those at the top, that's awesome. If you are a top tier cybersecurity cloud engineer with AWS certifications, you are writing your ticket. That's awesome. Rapid salary increases, that's awesome. As an industry, we have one of the highest median incomes across our industry. That is all great for us. And if you're at the top, it's good for you, but the problem is the vast majority of us are not at the top. We're the ones in the middle of our careers or the beginnings of our careers, and it creates a lot of other problems because companies are only looking for these top tier people. So if you've ever heard of NICE, it's the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. They chart job openings. So in August of 2017, there were 280,000 job openings in our industry gone unfilled, which I have an issue with because how many of you in here are actively seeking jobs or would actively seek a job? If more than one hand is raised, what's wrong with that number? How do we have 280,000 open jobs and people out of work? Every conference I go to, every talk I give, every place I go, I meet people that are clamoring for jobs. I'm going, wait, but you have good experience? You've got 15 years in IT. The only thing you don't have is maybe some experience in cybersecurity. You can learn this stuff. So it's frustrating for me when I see that because we're creating the job shortage. And then the last piece is more around the management of it, people. So I am a people manager. I do lead teams. I have 4 different teams under my purview right now, and I'm part of the leadership team of my CISO. But when it comes to how we lead people, we focus on management, not leadership. Managers, it's an administrative function, right? Your entire job is to make sure people show up on time, they deliver something, they do that, and you do it, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. We very rarely give people the ability to build and develop people, not only from the perspective of we don't train the managers to become leaders, we don't even give them the resources. How many of you have been given training as a reward? How many of you actually get training? Let me just raise your hand there. All right. But for you, you're granted training as a reward, right? You are so lucky you get to, what? In an industry that is moving so fast and technology is it is moving and outpacing us, it is a privilege for you to go get training. It frustrates me, right? So how do we change this? What can we do? So when you talk about people, we talked about set working schedules and so on. Let's talk about remote employees. For startups, remote employees are a way of life, right? You've got a small little 2-3 person shop. You need a really awesome developer, and you live in Wichita, Kansas. Can't help where the ideas come from. So you may need to find someone that's not in that area, and that's okay. But most companies, or a lot of based in Frederick, Maryland, have to travel a little more, but so far so good, right? My team is phenomenal. Some of them are here today, and we seem to figure this out. they get to work from home every now and then too. We seem to figure that out too. The world has not burned down, my company has not burned down because we give people some choice. Talent also has choice now, right? If you're really good, or even marginally good, you can find companies that are willing to support this. So for those companies that are unwilling to support it, you're shutting yourself out from really great talent or potential talent, and that's really what's important as well. You need people that are willing to learn. Distributed teams are an option. If you can't support, so I get it, co-location's good. It's nice to have your team together. If you can get places where you have like clusters of teams, you know, if you're a larger company, you've got an office on the West Coast, office on the East Coast, split the teams. Let them sit in both offices. Give them the option, because again, you open up your talent pool, but there's so many of us that can't move for some reason or another, right? Maybe you have older parents that you want to be near. Maybe all your family lives in one area. Maybe, unfortunately, you're divorced and you've got kids you need to be around from a previous marriage. There's 101 reasons why you should support that. But, again, distrust of the worker, right? We're thinking that people just want it because they want to lazy around all day and sit in their pajamas. And that's how we look at it. Flexible schedules. This one is really one of the simplest things to do, but companies don't like doing it because, oh, you're giving freedom to people, apparently. You can do what I call core working hours. This is really easy. Your core working hours, let's be honest, not everybody's in the office at 8, not everybody stays till 5 anyway. As a company or as a group, if you said, hey, we're gonna work core hours 10 to 3, you can flex on either side of that. If you schedule a meeting at 8, you better make sure you talk to those people first, right? A bunch of people may not show up. So if you come in at 9, you leave an hour later. If you come in at 6, you can leave a couple hours earlier. And there's plenty of reasons to support something like this. What if your significant other normally takes the kids to the bus stop and they're sick today? And you need to do it, but the bus comes at 8, but you need to be in the office. A lot of people actually have to take PTO to do that, which is unbelievable to me. So we have to be willing to provide that little bit of flexibility because it provides work-life balance. You don't feel like you're a slave to your job, and you'd be much more willing to work there. For time off, so again, when I talked about time off, PTO, right, that was all about distrust of the worker. Now we can go to the far other side, which is unlimited time off, and there's pluses and minuses to that. And there's research and there's articles that suggest when you do that people actually won't take time off. They feel guilty about taking time off, so that doesn't really work. One of the things that I like the idea of is having minimum amounts of time off. Meaning, yeah, if you have unlimited, situations come up that you may have to be out for more than that 4 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 weeks that you may be given. But you know what? As a manager, I'm going to make sure you're out of the office for 3 weeks a year. And as a manager, I'm going to fanatically track your time, not to make sure you're staying in the office, but to make sure going, hey, when was the last time you were out? It's been 3 months since I approved some time off. Are you okay? Like, go. Take that Friday. I have team members, coming out of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, 2 of my team members run a lot of that. So after a month, they're doing events every single day. They are zonked. So at the end, they're like, we're gonna take off. If they hadn't told me they were taking off, I was probably gonna say, go please, take some time. It's really important because again, people feel like they can't do it. Management teams are not willing to support it, and that's a change that we need to make as managers. But as if you're not a manager, you need to push that issue, right? And if you are at a place that is not gonna support it and you have an option, find somewhere else, right? Find a place that's gonna support your way of life that's gonna be comfortable for you. We talked about buying talent. What we need to shift to is building talent. I'm going to be polite about this. If you were involved in the hiring process at all, whether you're a manager, a leader, an HR rep, or anything, for the love of everything that is holy, stop it with the BS job requirements. Stop putting in there that someone needs to have a bachelor's degree in information systems or information security. Stop putting on there that someone needs to have their CISSP. They do not need those things to do most of the jobs in this industry. Most of the people that I consider to be the top talent that I work with or that I trust do not have degrees. The other ones, I don't know if they have degrees, nor do I care. And that's not to say education's not good. I want people to have degrees, right? It's important. It's important to educate yourself and to learn. But you know what? What if you just didn't have that opportunity, but you took it upon yourself to learn these things? You did things like Coursera or other online training options. You go to conferences, you network, you meet people, you're part of groups. Why should that shut you out just because of a stupid piece of paper? It makes no sense to me. I started taking them out of my job requirements. To be fair, I sometimes put them in there just to get the worst of the worst of people that are just like spamming my recruiters. But I own the recruitment process for my teams. I tell my HR reps, give me the resumes first. I will read through them and I will tell you who to screen out. I don't let them pre-screen. So when I've done that, this is what I can tell you. There is no talent shortage in my organization. We sometimes take a little longer than we want. Sometimes it is a little harder to find that right person. We're being a little picky, but we've grown 5-fold in 2 years as a cybersecurity organization, and we have not had a problem finding talent. Why? Because the hiring managers and our teams are involved in the process. I get referrals from my team members on a regular basis, and I get them when we're hiring and when we're not hiring. Hey, this person's great, I used to work with them here, awesome, let's talk to them. Let's talk and see if there's something that maybe might work. Maybe I don't have something for me, but we can find another place. So when groups stop relying on just HR and talent acquisition or whatever they're called these days, you can actually find people. And guess what? If you talk about these other things, you are a little bit more flexible, you talk about good ways and how you handle PTO and things like that, you will attract good talent because they will be excited to want to work for you. Last but not least is managers that lead. Not all managers make good leaders, and not all leaders make good managers. One is administrative, one is motivation. Those are really the two differences between managers and leaders. So if you are a manager or aspire to become a manager, think about it this way. If you're going to be a manager, focus on all. So the business of it right now is not very good, as far as I'm concerned. So a couple of pieces up there. So risk registers. How many of you actually know what a risk register is? Okay, a couple. How many of you have ever seen the risk register related to your group or company? Okay, less hands go down. There's a problem with risk registers. Most people have never seen them. They're pretty static. You go through this process. You get some type of a finding or a report, right? Audit comes in, or someone comes yelling, you got a problem, and you get a finding, you have to go fix it, and then it goes away. Well, did you fix it all the way? Did you only kind of fix it? And depending on your audit teams, there's more of a process to it, but what you don't see is all the other risk out there. Do other groups have the same problem as you? Have you fixed a problem that can maybe be used to fix someone else's problem? No friggin' idea. This process is so opaque, and that's on us. That's on risk teams to fix this. Policy is another area of major pain. You want to use policy to drive action because that's the one thing you got. For some teams, it's the only stick you have. You didn't meet policy, go fix this problem. But here's the problem. Guess what kind of policies we write? Current state policies. You write a policy that you can meet right now. So at best, your company or your group is going to get just to the point where you're kind of okay with things, and that's it. Regulators, they're the reason we do this. They come in, so you get an internal audit, an external audit, and they say, you're not meeting your policy. There's a finding. Okay, well then, why would you ever write policy that was just a little bit better or margin there? You're not going to. So what you wind up getting out of this is, don't write policy you can't meet. So policy is no longer a driver of change, it's a driver of paperwork and pain, is what it winds up being. For the risk teams themselves, we tend to be pretty segregated. How many of you actually know people on your risk team? How many of you actively avoid people on your risk team? Yeah, right? We're not really helpful. I will fully admit that. And that's because when it comes to risk, right, we are purveyors of pain. I give you a problem, you have to do a whole boatload of paperwork to get past that problem, and I'm not offering any value to you. I'm not offering really good guidance, I'm just saying, you have this problem. Oh, hey guys, you know what? You do not have SSO implemented across all of your sites, you need to get that going. Well, then you have a team on the side going, we don't know how to do this, can you help? Nope, just get it done. And that's your finding, right? So I'll give you a quick story about this. This is the work, this is such a pain for me. So I came into a team at one of my old positions, and we had an audit finding around meeting agendas. And we didn't have good tracking of our meeting agendas. Okay, fine, so we fixed it. A little bit of process, couple file shares, good to go. So I had meeting agendas for 6 different groups of meetings going. So I go from there to a year later I have to go through my validation audit, which is basically the audit all over again to say that I did the thing I said I was going to do. Pass my validation audit, not a problem there. A year later now I'm on a 2-year audit cycle, which is a lie because I just went through an audit. A year later I went through a validation audit. Now I'm back to audit again, so I'm just kind of continuously being audited. And they're not supposed to audit you in the same areas multiple years in a row because you should have fixed problems. So guess what they audited me on? Meeting agendas. Okay, so fine, not a problem. Like, I got this wrapped up. Give them all the information, they come back. You have a problem. Oh boy, what is it? You're missing meeting agendas. Okay, who and how many? 4. Over what time period? Because they'll do sample, right? Over the year. It's a weekly meeting. So out of 52 weeks, I'm missing 4 agendas in one group. Yes. That's a finding? Yes. Why? Well, your procedure says you have one every week. So, but sometimes we cancel the meetings. Do you have a record of that? No. People get sick. So this is where I got all like risk and policy on them. Show me the policy that says I need to track when I cancel the meeting. Ha! So, needless to say, the audit team, the managers, they're like, you've got to be kidding. There's no way we can have a finding on this. But it's emblematic of this problem, right? It's just all built on process, which is my last piece. Complicated processes. Risk is actually kind of complicated when you really get into the nuts and bolts in it. I originally had planned to go get my C-Risk solely so I could bash the C-Risk. So I got the book. It's actually not that big. It's about 120 pages. It's kind of like just a workbook, and I'm reading through it, and I'm going, it's actually really good. Reading through it some more. Oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh, that's a good diagram. Well, I'm stealing that. It was good. Somehow, though, we took this 120 pages of really good of a framework, and we turned it into, from a NIST perspective, thousands of pages of guidance and workflows and diagrams. It's insane. I think I did the last count. If you take all of the NIST the risk management framework, and put it all together, it's almost 1,000 pages. Now take that, so now my job is to implement all of this. So companies will say, go do the risk management framework from NIST. Cool, got it. 1,000 pages later, you're kind of like your head's swimming, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're trying to put this in. So what you wind up with is overly complicated processes in the interest of clarity. I have to make it very clear exactly what's going on. So when I do that, I create a bunch of processes. So you get an audit finding, or you get a risk finding, right? So I go up to my teams, okay, you have a finding, it's risk related, and I've done the analysis, here you go. You need to make an action plan. Cool, so they go and make an action plan. Well, maybe they get busy with something else, they forget about the action plan, then they give it to me, and then they pass their action plan date. So guess what they have to do now? They have to create another action plan with the new dates. And now my team's tracking the new dates, and then they're planning, and they're replanning, and so on. We've created this insane set of processes that, one, no one wants to do. People actively telling me here that you're avoiding your risk teams because we're not providing value. And that's a problem, because the whole purpose of a risk team is to help reduce risk in an organization. And in all honesty, all we're doing is we're creating toll gates, we're creating unnecessary work, and we are increasing risk. Because the reason is this: while risk is moving at a certain, it's kind of at a certain level, right? New risks are coming every day. We're not even helping to drag down the baseline. So it's just getting worse and worse because we're barely moving anywhere. So how do we change this? First is what I call this concept of operationalized risk. This is where the ideas of like Agile and DevOps methodologies, which, and I'm not going to say that Agile and DevOps are the best thing in the world, but there's 3 elements in the DevOps handbook that they talk about, which is fast flow, rapid feedback, and continuous learning or continuous improvement is what I would call it. So we need to turn risk into that, right? It needs to actually be done in a way that is fast flow, rapid feedback, and continuous learning. So one, those risk registers need to come to the forefront. You need to see them all the time. If we're a manufacturing organization, they have these big dashboards that are digital and they're always running. You should have one of those with your risk register on it. See every single risk as it pops up. Now, true to form, we don't get risks every single day, but when they come up, they should go up there, and we shouldn't hide them. People are afraid of their risk registers because it's the skeleton in the closet. No, you need to be looking at it because you can't fix it otherwise. Risk teams should be communicating with you. They should be coming to you with problems proactively, saying, hey, we were talking with some people, we did a presentation, and we found out that you guys have an issue with part of your AD setup. Can we talk about that? And then this is what everybody else does. They take a step back, like, why are you looking at my stuff? Because we come into it in the wrong situation, in the wrong way. So we need to partner, we need to engage, we need to be presenting in front of people, talking about risk, and educating people about risk. I get it, for some folks, you take engineers and bring them in the room and you talk about risk, they tune up immediately. But when I tell them, okay, yes, but my risks are gonna drive the next project that you're gonna do, so if you're seeing problems, help me tie your problem to the risk, explain it to me, because at some point, I need to sell what you're doing to someone. If you need $1 million or $500,000 or $1,000 to do a project, you need to explain why you're doing it. And that's where the partnership starts to come in. The registers themselves need to be actively managed, like I said. My team right now, we're actually working on doing just that. We're going to take our risk, we actually have taken our risk register, we've turned it into something that's publicly available to the company internally, and it's dynamic. They can click on it and it tells them things, and they can drill down through it. For policy, the way to do this is, so there's two ways to go about it, but good policy should be a framework, right? It's something that can change over time, and you can add to it, delete from it, because guess what? What we're doing daily changes. But what happens in all reality is like concrete. Policy sets over time, and it gets super hard, and it becomes unchangeable. Your framework has turned into dogma. And before you know it, you have these fixed policies, and then they're just useless. I'll talk about passwords in a little bit, but that's one example of where password policies are a problem. So we have two options. So option number one, which is the option I've taken, is I've written, we are rolling out all brand new policies, target state. I am writing policies I knowingly am not meeting. And that makes people very nervous. But my way of explaining this is, but I'm writing the policy of where I want to be, but I'm charting against it. So this control, I'm 25% across the company. This control, we're 50% across the company. I have something, I have a stick now that's actually driving us to improvement with our groups, and I'm talking to them. We engage with our systems administrators. We engage with our IT partners, our business continuity disaster recovery partners. We are talking with them all the time. Again, it's this concept of having an integrated team. For companies that can't do that, usually in financial services, but some companies can't do that, right? You're just too heavily regulated, fine. You write your current state policies, and that's a paperwork exercise for you. What you do take is the policies you want and the controls that you want, and you chart against them. So, and not the organizational maturity stuff where it's, oh, here are the 5 categories and the 5 levels, and they're really broad, like, you chart how well do you communicate risk. No one understands it, some people understand it. You have to go a little further than that. You need to chart a few more controls, unfortunately. My team tracks upwards of about 700 total controls. It's a lot, I'll fully admit it, but you don't have to go that far. I'm a big company. We have 70,000 people, so I can kind of get away with that. Critical security controls, right there. Even if you don't even dive into the sub-controls, there's 20 of them. So if you can ask yourself, do we have good asset management, critical security control number 1? The answer is no. Good. Now dive into the controls and figure that out. And don't bother with anything else. The hard part is explaining, well, how do we do that? From the streamlined process perspective, that's the thing that we need to figure out and that we need to do is we need to cut out as much process as possible. And it's really hard to do, especially in really large organizations, government organizations, even smaller places are starting to, oh, well, we have to have all this process. We spend money on consultants and they come in and they do all this stuff. So how do we streamline it? Well, I have one way that I've done it with my group, and it's simple. Everything we do must reduce risk. Everything. Every task, every initiative, every project must reduce risk. So if you're doing something and you cannot tell me how it reduces risk, stop doing it. I won't yell at you for not doing it. So if you need to stand up a new task tracking system, so you're gonna say, hey, we're gonna start using Jira. Awesome. How is it helping you reduce risk? Well, I don't know. Just sounds like a really cool idea, and then don't do it. Come back to me when you can explain how it helps you reduce risk. Oh, well, actually, it's gonna make us more efficient in tracking our work. We're gonna be able to have that fast flow that we're talking about. We're gonna be able to see where everybody's working. We're gonna be able to tell if people are overtasked. We're gonna be able to follow up better with our partners. Awesome, great. And then you move on. This one's a little harder for teams just because it requires you to look inward. We're not very good. We like blaming other people for our problems, right? So as a risk team, it's really easy to just go, hey, you back there, you didn't want to talk to me? That's your fault. That's why you're all messed up. No, it's kind of it's a dual thing, right? You need to be, you show me mine, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, right? Everybody needs to be willing to come to the table, which means one, it needs to be kind of a no-fault zone. So you need to be willing to have that conversation, be like, I see teams, they'll come to me. So, how are your password policies on that system? Well, guys, just tell me. They're not very good. Okay, why aren't they very good? Well, the system's 20 years old. It can only support a maximum of 8 characters and only alpha characters. Okay, great. That's a risk, right? Yeah, it's a risk. Can we mitigate it? Well, this is what we're doing. We literally only have 2 people that have that level of access to the system. Oh, seems like a pretty good mitigation. It's a conversation. It is not a dictatorial, you go do this, I do that. In many ways, risk teams are the security teams of old in the way that we are approaching things. All right, now let's talk about actual information security, right? So the business of it, the current state. So I have firewalls and VPNs up there, but I'm not actually saying they're bad. They're the classics though, right? It's the classics of security. Any rules, failed key exchanges between VPN appliances and nothing works. Who remembers those days? You know, the server that you can't physically fit into the rack because you're going, wait, it's 19 inches, 14, wait, it's a 2U, crap, wait, I only have 4U, 3, you're doing like friggin' unit math to get these things, you know? That's what we grew up with. There's actually a reason for it. First off, there's nothing wrong with it because this is technology or ideas that will live with us. Firewalls, whether they're appliance-based or virtual-based in the cloud and things like that, you're always gonna need these things. But they tend to me, they represent a traditional way of thinking, which is that we tend to explain things in concepts we understand. Just the word firewall. A firewall is a thing that stops fire from moving from point A to point B. Right? A firewall in your car, right? The front of your car, underneath your feet, that is a firewall. So if the engine light's on fire, the cabin's not supposed to go up in flames as well. That's what a firewall is. Prevents things from going from point A to point B. That's why we call it a firewall, because people understand it. However, the world is getting a whole lot more complicated, and the technologies that we use do not fit those paradigms anymore. Sometimes you just don't have a physical analog to explain it, so we have to figure that out. I talk about password complexity because I think this one points to a lot of issues. So for anybody who's been doing this for a long time, passwords represent the #1 pain point for decades, right? How many of you have dealt with the, I forgot my password, and you reset their password. 90-day password expiration happens, and you happen to have 300 people on the same day getting their password expired. How many phone calls do you get to the help desk? 500. Because the 300, 200 of them forget the password that you just gave them over the phone. So passwords are kind of emblematic of security, some of the stuff we've been doing for years. They have resulted in nothing but bad behavior, increase to our help desk, increase in pain to our teams, and then when we try to change it, people hate us for it. So all of this work has led to what? The number of conversations I have to have about passwords, I have little clicky pens that says, you know, gives you all these things about your strong password. 3 of 4 character sets, you can't have repeating numbers, you can't use real words. No human being can remember this stuff. NIST has seen the light. Their new password guidance came out, which was great. And it was awesome, and they went really hard line, and they talked about MFA, 2FA. They backtracked a little bit on SMS. They originally were gonna say no SMS, and they're like, okay, we'll allow SMS. But what I can tell you, this is what's really funny. That password guidance has seasoned security professionals in a tizzy because they're arguing against it, actively arguing against it. If I see the XKCD comic about entropy, first off, let's talk about entropy real fast. When you talk about entropy, it works on the assumption that you actually use the entire key space of the character sets. So if you're saying 4 of 4, right, special characters, alphanumeric, and all that stuff, entropy assumes you're capable of using the entire key space, which humans do not do. There are certain keys on a keyboard we do not press. There are certain things we don't use. So entropy, character sets, complexity, and all that stuff, that's kind of out the door at this point. But so NIST actually came back and said, listen, if you get past a certain point, you're using either 2FA or MFA, password complexity goes out the door. I watched people's hair light on fire. And I think part of it was a reaction to, but we just spent the past 10 years preaching password complexity. Now we're going to say that we're wrong. Yep. And that's the fundamental difference in what we need to do. So IT versus security. So this one is one that always cracks me up. So security grew out of IT, right? The security teams just didn't grow up in a flower pot one day. It's like, hey, look, I'm the security guy. The IT people became the security people. But over time, we diverged. We got more siloed because we got more specialized, and then the shenanigans began. The team from which we came suddenly doesn't like us anymore. They view us as an impediment. We get in the way of their efforts. What is the purpose of most IT functions? It's to support and enable a business through the use of technology. But the IT team sitting here going, nope, can't do that. Hey, we want to use this cloud thing. Nope, can't use that. That's not good either. And so we've become the land of no, and our IT teams hate us for it. We tend to forget, though, we came from the same place. So how do we move beyond that? One of the things that, if you ever get into this argument, one of the things you should actually really look at is the technology that we use as security professionals. For many, many years, and in certain areas now, it's very immature. You know, the technology, as you looked at what firewalls were and what firewalls are, they have come a very long way. And before, yes, it was a yes or no thing. It was either on, it wasn't off. Couldn't really do a whole lot else. That's gotten better over time. But then the new thing comes up, right? The new area. So SaaS applications is the area that we're dealing with now. Most companies do not have a way to deal with that. How do you assess the problem? So we'll talk about that in a second, but really what we have to figure out is how do we take the two disciplines and bring them back together so we can stop fighting with each other? Like we're like long distance cousins right now that you kind of don't like them. You see them once a year at Thanksgiving, and for the most part, is if you can come out without a black eye, you feel good. Security as overhead is a major issue because it manifests itself in two different ways. If you're a well-funded team, so I will fully admit funding is not a problem for me because we have spent a lot of time really working with our executive teams to help them understand the problem. But funded teams are now coming under scrutiny. So the companies that were spending 50, 60, 100, $200 million on security, their boards are now starting to ask, why am I spending all this money? What's happening? What's the value here? Underfunded teams are continuing to be underfunded. Non-funded teams are continuing to be non-funded. The problem is that many companies just do not have the in-house expertise, right? How do you get a security person in-house if no one cares about security? So you take the 2 or 3 IT folks that you have and you're like, so I'm gonna scrape together $5 grand, I'm gonna send it to a sales class, and that's all you get. How do you take that and somehow build a program off of it? It's not viable. But then you have no way to justify it when you're doing it. So security teams are gonna have to start earning their keep, meaning we're actually going to have to talk in the language of business. We're going to have to start justifying our existence a little more than just, so the world is burning down. Doesn't work anymore. So what's the beast? What are the changes that we have? So zero trust networks. So you've got the whole Google Beyond Corp, that idea, but services like G Suite, Office 365, those have completely transformed our environments, right? So if you've got a company that's using that, before it was simple, well, it was simpler. You had a little area where everything was on the inside, you never let them out, you didn't let anybody in. Now you took some of your core services that are the most vulnerable and you put them outside that sphere of control. SaaS platforms are everywhere, and newsflash, they're really friggin' good. I use so many different SaaS platforms because they are these great point solutions that I can roll out to a subset of people. The costs are lower. I don't have to worry about the infrastructure. They're secure. We assess them. So how do you do that, though? You had all these core services that used to be inside your control, and now you've got 1, 2, 10, 20, 50 services that are everywhere. So we have two choices. We can go back to where we were, land of no. Nope, can't do it. Financial services, that's how they take it, and that's nice and easy. But for other companies, especially smaller ones, where funding is a problem, you have to let these things happen. The question is, how do we let it happen in a safe and secure way? A couple ways, couple bits of guidance I can give you on this. One is you need an assessment program, which means you need a way to actually assess the SaaS applications, the SaaS software that your teams are going to use, right? You need to know the data that's going in, the data that's coming out, and you have to have some level of understanding. Just because it's an application from Microsoft, do not assume it's secure. Just because it's Jira or anything from Atlassian, don't assume it's secure. At least ask the questions. They're used to it at this point, believe me. The second is you have to move to centralized authentication of some sort. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it, but because you have all these disparate services, you have to get them all under one roof from an authentication standpoint, because when John or Sally leave the company, you need to be able to shut off their access. A lot of companies right now are in a position where when someone leaves, they have no idea what access they have. And they wind up maintaining that access for years. All it's going to take, and it happens all the time, but for you or your companies, right, all it takes is one person to steal data, grab data, trash a system or something like that, and you're going to be answering some really, really tough questions. The last is you need some type, and I'll use the term enterprise architect. You need a person or a team that's in charge of figuring out which services you should be using. There's too many options, right? So a group's going to come to you and say, I want to use Dropbox, okay? And another group, I want to use Box. And the other one, well, we have Office 365, let's use OneDrive. Someone needs to adjudicate that fight. You need a referee there. All of them have their pluses and their minuses, but it's going to come down to money and features. Get the most security features for the money. Does it do what you need it to do? So what happens is we kind of become more planners, right? You're going to be part of that requirements conversation. Well, I need the ability to share files with external customers. Cool. Is that your only requirement? Just you need to be able to share a file with an external customer. Yes. Well, there's a lot of services that'll do that securely. But then the requirements keep coming. You have to kind of prod and poke them a little bit. Well, I need to be able to share with customers, but I need to be able to do it in groups, and I need multiple people internally. Okay, now it's a different conversation. You need to be part of that conversation. Multi-factor authentication. All right. If you use a SaaS service and you do not have MFA turned on, go turn it on. It's silly that you don't. If any of you in here have SaaS-based email services, Office 365, Gmail, and you are not using 2FA, pick up your phone right now and call your boss, your CEO, your CISO, and start complaining about this. The number of email compromises based on just the fact that people are not using 2FA on these is insane. And the amount of loss that we have as companies because of it is insane. So if you are not dealing with account compromises every single day, and you don't have 2FA in one of these services, I can guarantee you, you just don't know about it. Absolutely can guarantee you about it. Larger companies that aren't using 2FA are dealing with account compromises 10, 20 a day. And guess what they do? They just deal with it. And they're like, well, shut down the account with it. Which is insane to me. Going back to that streamlined process thing, I'm a process person at heart, you gotta fix that problem. When we look at that integration of IT and security, right? I think as an industry, we're kind of at a crossroads right now. And a couple of things may happen. In some companies, your security teams are getting really strong and powerful, and they have some of the brightest talent. In some places, I think they're going to consume the IT departments. They're going to suck them in, right? Because you're doing so many things that cross over, like identity and access management. Well, you've got your architect that knows IDAM better than anybody else, but the IDAM team is being run out of security or out of IT. They're just going to let's just take in the IDAM team. Why bother? Asset management. Fundamentally, the asset management is a core IT function, but security needs it too. We're just going to suck it in, right? That's option one. Probably not the best option. The second option is we bring the organizations back together and you create that hybrid model. If you can do that and you can start looking at your functional roles, networking as an example. So I've met some enterprise architects that are just absolutely friggin' phenomenal. They don't know anything about security. But man, can they architect you a super clean, super efficient network across 10 or 20 global locations. They're awesome. But they don't know security. So who should be sitting next to them? The network security architect. And they work together. Why are they in separate teams? Just put them in the same team. And they just work together. Hey, check my work on the security side, and the security guy makes some changes that fundamentally breaks this wonderful, beautiful network this guy put together, and they figure it out between the two of them. They shouldn't have to keep throwing it over the wall, which is ultimately what we're doing. From an operation standpoint, large operations typically have multiple command centers. So for those of you that work in a SOC, do some of your organizations have a separate operations center for IT? Yeah, right? And then other ones will actually have a completely separate operations for global security. Well, these things should be combined. They absolutely should be combined. Our operations should be much more NASA flight control than it's these siloed groups. So yeah, you have a seat for the security team, you have a seat for the IT ops team, you have a seat for your app ops team if you're still doing that, you have a seat for your global security team. And newsflash, they don't all have to sit in the same place. They just need to understand that they're working as a core cohesive unit. So when you have an incident that happens, right? Network link goes down between two sites, that hits. Everybody's looking at it so they can kind of wave off and say, not us. So network link goes down, network team says, hey, we had a core switch go down. We got to take care of that. Security team's going, do you have any indication of a breach or some type of an attack? No, purely internal. Cool, network's out of the way. Global security, do we have a problem at the site? Did someone break in? Did they trash something? Do we have a fire at the site? Nope, looks like it's just the hardware. Cool, global security steps out of the way. Well, now you've just completely deconflicted two potentially major problems in minutes. And guess what? Now the network team can just focus on fixing the network hardware. The last piece is security driving business. So, like I said, we're not really good at this. We are geeks, we are nerds, and we like security tools, and we are much happier behind a console than we typically are in front of a board of directors. We need to figure that out. This is where the CISO role typically comes in. You know, your CISOs are supposed to be the ones out in front, but they can't do it by themselves. I spend so much of my time going out and talking and about security and educating about security and trying to get people to understand it because I need to justify our existence beyond the next breach. Yes, the old adage, never waste a good breach, but if that's what I'm waiting for to hope I get a little bit of extra money, I've got a problem. So the key is taking every effort you do and walking that all the way down the line to how it impacts your internal customers, your external customers. So if you're purely doing something that's an internal thing, let's talk about MFA as an example. Rolling out MFA can be very, very painful depending on how you do it. Even just getting soft tokens on people's phones, Duo or Centrify or anything like that, that's heavy, that's hard on people. For the really technically declined, it's basically insurmountable. So it takes a lot of time and effort to get it going. But, so then they complain about it and they're going, why do I have to do this? Well, now you need to start talking to that end user. Well, what does this mean for the end user? It means a couple of things. One is, well, we're going to protect your data. No, doesn't matter, it's just company data. Don't care if I lose my company data. Okay, you do realize that your payroll uses the same login as your email, right? Yeah. Can you make changes to your bank account information through your payroll account? Yeah. So this can impact you, can it? Oh yeah. So suddenly they're all, now it's like, hold on, show it to me. Now they're invested. For an IT operations team, like, guys, if you roll out MFA, we're gonna have to support this, our help desk calls are gonna go up, how are we gonna manage this? Well, the answer to that is, say, yeah, but think about how much time we're actually going to save for the end user and for you, because they're not gonna have to change their passwords. They're not gonna get their accounts compromised and we're gonna shut them down for 4 hours while we have to do some issue, or God forbid they have to lose it for 2 days because we have to do forensics on their account. That goes away, users are happy, you get less calls. Suddenly IT ops going, oh, that's a great idea, I love it. So you now have your users happy, or at least somewhat happy, you have IT ops happy, and you get what you want from a security standpoint. And you've positively impacted multiple teams. Everything we do can positively impact a team. We don't have to be just a pain point for everybody. All right, so what does this mean? Now, what do we do, right? What do we do as an industry? What do we do as a group? So the first thing is we were talking about that beast. So change. We must be capable of tolerating and thriving in the face of change. That is what is going to make us successful as a group, as an industry. You need to embrace that change and become an agent of change. We need smart people that are intelligent, driven, passionate to challenge the status quo. Do not let your companies just slide by. And it does not matter what level you're at. You don't have to be a manager, a leader, or a CISO to make change in your organization. Most of these changes don't come from them anyway because they're not in the weeds doing this stuff. You need to question the status quo. Just make sure you do this. If you have a complaint, have a solution to back it up. Never go in just complaining. You can complain. My team, they can complain to me all they want if they bring to me a litany of potential solutions. Now, I may shoot down every single one, happens at times, but at least they're thinking. That's what I want. Change also doesn't have to be cataclysmic. It's a process that's continual and iterative. If your change is cataclysmic, you screwed up. That means something that's so bad, you have no choice but to scrap it, throw it out, and do something different. If change is gradual and you're slowly fixing problems, that's never going to happen. You're not trying to boil the ocean, you're trying to see the ocean for what it is, and you're going, okay, I see it, I'm going to take a step back and figure out the small iterative steps that I'm going to take to make this work. So for us, so what I kind of implore all of you, regardless of what you do, where you are, where you work, be an agent of change. You differentiate yourself by being at places like this. You differentiate yourself by coming to conferences and doing more, learning more, educating. Don't waste this momentum. Take in everything you can at this conference. I love BSides Delaware. There are some great people here, and what's cool, because it's a BSides, the talks are all over the place. There's some really cool talks being presented that you don't see at other security conferences. Ask questions, network, look for ways to initiate change. If someone has a great idea that you're hearing, talk to them about it. Grab the speaker at the end of the talk and get some more information. Find out who they follow. Find out what books they're reading. You need to be relentless. When there's something that you need to see changed, you need to be there and be the one changing it. And it is just this ferocity of what you're going to do and how you're going to address it. So I have a really, really good friend of mine, Ike, who many years ago gave me this quote. And it sits with me because I tend to get a little passionate about things from time to time. I didn't know at the time it was from Cannonball Run, but I'm going to leave you guys with this. If you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. All right, thank you. So my timing did come in on time, but Josh started late. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody does have questions, either now or any point if you see me. Any questions here, in here?
You said IT versus security. Is there a difference between security and cyber? Because in some cases it is IT versus cyber team?
No, good question. So the question was in this concept of IT versus security, was I talking about cybersecurity? Generally, yes. I'm typically talking. It was just shorter on this slide, but your physical security teams are part of this conversation as well. So it is important to have them as part of it. And sometimes physical security does get in the way of the effort from their perspective. Anything else? All right, please feel free to grab me at any point. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent talk.
Thank you.